Heavenly Father, today we put on the full armor to protect us against attack. We put on the belt of truth to protect against lies and deception. We put on the breastplate of righteousness to protect our hearts from the temptations. We put the gospel of peace on our feet to walk in your light, peace, and freedom with the Holy Spirit. We rebuke anxious thoughts. We take up your shield of faith for protection to block and destroy all the darts and threats thrown at us by the enemy. We put on the helmet of salvation to cover our minds and thoughts, reminding us that we are children of a mighty King. We are forgiven, set free, saved by the blood of Jesus. We take up the sword of the Spirit, your living word, that has the power to demolish strongholds and is sharper than any double-edged sword. We come to you, Lord, in prayer daily. In Jesus' mighty name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Hey guys, welcome to The Imagination. I'm your host, Emma, and today I'm honored to have back on the show for a second time after an overwhelmingly positive response to his first episode to do a part 2, operational CIA monarch mindslave, overcomer, writer and author, husband, father, whistleblower, and walking miracle, J.R. Sweet. A little bit about J.R. if you missed his last episode where he shared his testimony. He grew up in a multi-generational, incest-based, satanic, and Mormon family bloodline whose lineages trace back to King Henry VIII, and he didn't begin to recall his family's involvement with the CIA's MKUltra mind control program until he was 38. JR was trained to be a political sleeper assassin for the CIA since childhood and would be used on kill missions on behalf of high-level members of the agency and network to help carry out their dark agendas. Since awakening to his abuse and the truth about his family, he began an incredible blog titled The Mormon Monarch at more.Monarch.com, where he shares harrowing details about his life and past and also the inspirations behind healing. I highly recommend you guys check his blog out. You can head to www.mormonmonarch.com to learn more, and I'll have this linked in the show notes and encourage you all to go check it out and to go support JR. The last time he was on, we dove headfirst into his story and some of his testimony of being born into MKUltra testing protocols for children and entering into the programs, kill missions, exposing Disney as a programming and child exploitation center, and so much more. If you missed that first episode, I'll link it below so you can go watch it. So many of you had the most touching outcries of support and love for JR, and it was really amazing reading the comment section after his last episode went live. Thank you all for supporting and uplifting JR. The things he talks about are not easy and take a tremendous amount of courage. This time around, JR is going to expand on what we talked about last time regarding his life in MKUltra, so we can all together shine a light so bright on these darknesses that they cease to exist anymore. JR himself is a walking testimony of what happens when you shine a light on the darkness, and I know you all felt that from him last time. JR's abusers tried everything they could to break him, but what they could not break was his spirit. The fact that he is sitting here today with us is a miracle in itself, and I ask you all to put away anything you are doing, rally around JR, hold space, and give him your full attention. We are all going to learn a lot together on today's episode, and we always have to keep in mind what an honor it is to get to listen to a survivor speak. Before I finish introducing today's guest, I wanted to give a quick reminder that if you're a survivor or whistleblower who wants to share your story on the podcast or just wants to share some information privately with me, you can feel free to email me at imagineabetterworld2020@gmail.com. You can also support me on Substack at www.emmacatherine@substack.com, where I'm taking up journaling as an outlet for me personally to reflect on the podcast, the guests, and my advocacy work. All my social media links as well are in the show notes, and I can't thank all of you enough for your endless love and support of this show and each amazing guest who has the courage to share. So you guys, without further ado, please help me in welcoming this week's guest of honor, monarch survivor, voice for the voiceless, advocate for our children, and generational circuit breaker, J.R. Sweet. J.R., thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you, Emma. Thank you for having me back again. I appreciate the opportunity.
I appreciate you. We were talking before we hit record, these things aren't something anybody wakes up excited to talk about, and it takes a tremendous amount of courage to not just prepare emotionally, but just, to actually speak it out on a podcast, so I really appreciate you taking the time out, knowing how hard it is, but also seeing that we're quite literally shining a light on darkness that people need to know is there, and teaching us about these enemies that we haven't been educated on so we can finally expose them, bring justice, and eradicate all of this once and for all.
Yeah, yeah. The solution is not through silence. The solution is through all of us speaking out, everyone who's had to endure these things. And so I really appreciate the opportunity. I've been trying to blow the whistle on this for several years, Emma, and it's very difficult to do because there's so many people that are compromised and so many people that are owned in the world through many different faucets, from state, local, up through federal. And so it's good to have the opportunity to speak. So thank you. I appreciate that.
It's my honor. And I know last
Yeah,
time you went into some incredible details. I think today's going to be an incredibly valuable show. You have a lot of really important things that you want to talk about. So if it's okay with you, I'm going to hand it over to you and we can just sort of flow through whatever topics you want to cover first, and we can sort of move down a list that we have, and cover some really important things for people, and we'll just sort of go with your flow if that's okay.
that's great, Emma. Thank you. So I want to clarify to folks why I'm here in the first place, because these things aren't easy to do. It's not easy to talk about, and it comes with a great amount of risk. And the reason that I'm here and that I'm talking to you today is because I'm a survivor of the Central Intelligence Agency's trauma-based mind control program. And that's not a good thing. It's a very bad thing. It involves trauma, disassociation, abuse, sexual abuse, a lot of very evil and devious things. Really, what it boils down to is it's very illegal, first of all, what the United States government is doing. The Central Intelligence Agency, the White House knows about it. They're involved with it. The Pentagon knows they're involved with it. But it's illegal, it's immoral, and it's unconstitutional, and it should be stopped. And the people have the power to stop it if they know about it. That is what makes it so top secret, is they understand that. And they don't want people to know about it. It gets out in little bits here and there, but they don't want people to know about it. And so that's why I'm here today. It's not that I don't enjoy speaking with you, Emma, but it is a very painful and a very dangerous thing to be doing. Something I want to talk about before I get too far going is what is MK Ultra and what is trauma-based mind control to begin with, because there's a lot of folks, maybe this is the first time you've seen a video such as this, and you don't understand what trauma-based mind control is, or the CIA's MK Ultra projects. And so I want to take a moment to explain that. Now, with that said, Emma and I may use things that are triggers, and some of the content of this conversation may contain triggers, and I would not want to trigger anyone who is not consciously aware of who they are and what they've been through and what they've been programmed with. And so I want to put that warning out there. If you feel like you are a survivor of the project, then you need to do some healing and some research before you listen to this conversation. So the trauma-based mind control project that the CIA is running, a lot of people have heard about MK Ultra, Monarch, Project Monarch, these various projects, but when they research it, they come up with lots of things that tell them about the drug testing, things of that nature. And drugs are a big part of it. They feed you a ton of drugs in the project. But by the time that I came along, the drugs, a lot of the research had been done, and they knew and had formulated and synthesized several drugs that they would use with me, drugs that could put you to sleep or make you angry or make you feel invincible, wake you up. and they would mix them. And so drugs are a big part of that. But the key to trauma-based mind control is trauma and disassociation. That's why it's called trauma-based mind control, because they use trauma to cause you to disassociate and create in you what is called a multiple personality disorder. And this is what I prefer to call a multiple personality disorder and compared to a dissociative identity disorder, because they create multiple personalities within you. Yes, it is a dissociative identity disorder, but they're creating multiple personalities within you so that they can use you for various things. And you can go about your daily life living as a normal individual in society, and no one would suspect who you are. So it begins with trauma. They traumatize you from the time that you're born. And the most horrid kind of trauma to inflict on a child is sexual abuse by their family. So I was abused by my family, by my father, by my grandfather, by my uncle, various other individuals from the time that I was born. As far back as I can remember sexual abuse in our family. And this is generational. I come from a satanic generational ancestral bloodline. And so it's been going on in my family for a very long time. And those are the strongest children to disassociate, is my understanding, are children from satanic bloodlines who have, their family has a history of ancestral abuse. And so they take these children. It's an interesting dynamic, Emma, because there are various family bloodlines and children who've been abused that are collected into the project. And not all children that have been abused and are in satanic bloodlines are necessarily going to be pulled into the project. They may go through trauma-based mind control programming and satanic ritual abuse, but they may not be owned by the CIA. I was owned, literally owned as a slave by the Central Intelligence Agency, called a mind slave. That's how they could use me for various things. I have to get a drink of water. I'm sorry, Emma.
You have nothing to be sorry for. Take water anytime you need.
Nice, thank you. Yeah. So trauma-based mind control, they find kids, they find bloodlines, they do genealogical searches for these people, they seek them out and they find them. And sometimes that family keeps their family in the project, such as my family. My grandfather was involved with the CIA for as far back as I know. And my uncle, I don't know when he got involved with the CIA, probably after he was done with the Marines. But they they find these children and they test them for their ability to disassociate. So the satanic families and the pedophiles that are abusing these children, they are grooming them for future use potential as mind slaves. And so I was tested when I was 6 years old, or 5 years old. We talked about that in our last meeting. And I was sponsored by the Central Intelligence Agency to go through trauma-based mind control programming. And that programming took place at Disneyland. And so trauma-based mind control is being practiced all over the place. And so back to, I'm sorry, I'm getting distracted. I'll stay focused. So
You're doing
MK
great.
Ultra, yeah, MK Ultra, they're seeking out these children and then they are putting them into the project. And then they are raised under a very scientifically formulated process designed by the CIA. The CIA didn't invent it. They're not the first ones to start doing this. Satanic families have been doing it for a long time, and Satanists. And so it's nothing new, but the CIA has enhanced it greatly to a scientific process. And you're raised to do to be subjected to mind control programming in various places as a child and as you're growing. And so I was taken a lot to Disneyland, and there's a lot of mind control programming that happens at the Disneyland facility. And I was taken there several years in a row. We would go for a week at a time, once a year. Now, there's a couple years I believe we didn't go. I'm not sure what years those were yet, but so they find these children, they abuse them, and you're put through horrible things in the project. They're trying to break your mind. They're trying to split your mind and and take you to a point where those personalities are flawless, and they do awful things, Emma. They make you watch children be murdered in front of you. That happened several times while I was in Disneyland. I wrote about an experience of that in Disneyland 1984 that people can read on my website. And there are other experiences that I had down there of watching other children die, and it could be random and it could be planned out. And then in Disneyland, the programming included pornography. You were made to be in child pornography, this weird porn that was theme based, and they would have various people dressed up, children made to come there and watch this porn being filmed, dressed up in costumes. So they would be brought in and they would be in costumes, and it was always theme based, and these costumes varied. Sometimes it was Sesame Street themed, and sometimes it was NASA themed and alien themed, and so it varied in the theme of it. And so you were traumatized in that way through the project. You are also traumatized. It's very satanic, all of it. It's very satanic. You were traumatized by making you drink blood. They'd kill people and make you consume their blood. And they would also make you eat human flesh as well, which was really disgusting and awful. Um, but those are the kinds of things that they do in the project. They also make you abuse each other. I went through programming with my cousin and my little brother. My little brother was also selected for the project, and my younger cousin. And so the CIA sponsors this abuse. And then when you reach a certain age, where you are now well programmed enough, you have reached a certain point, a certain level of existence in the project, they will purchase you as from your parents or from your guardian or whoever that individual is. And I was purchased from my parents when I was 15 by Senator Robert Byrd. He was a real scumbag. I knew him. I remember meeting him when I was 6, the first time I was in Disneyland, and he was a very bad person. But they would then purchase you, and this purchase would be made. In my case, it was made through a government contract to my parents through the local school district. My father owned a computer store, and he got a large government contract through the local school district, something to do with their computer systems. And that's how I was paid for by the government and by Byrd. And so what MK Ultra is about is finding children from satanic and dissociative families, ancestral families, and then traumatizing them, programming them. This programming also involves things like deprivation tanks. These were designed by Dr. John C. Lilly. I met Lilly. He was one of the doctors in charge of my programming. I knew him as John, and he was interesting, an interesting fellow, but he was funded by our government for his research. And I was one of his projects, this Dr. John C. Lilly. And so they have various doctors involved as well. Lots of people are involved. And so they take these children, they put them through this programming, and then they purchase them and they use them. The programming is supposed to never end. You're supposed to be getting updates. You're supposed to be, your abuse is supposed to continue. When I was older, but I hadn't remembered these things yet, this was before 2017. I can remember, for example, being with my father on a camping trip, and him in the middle of the night, we were sleeping together because we were out camping, and so we were sleeping next to each other in bags. But in the middle of the night, he started to rub my leg, and I woke up and I was like, "What are you doing, dude? Like, what are you doing?" Yeah, and oh, well, I'm sorry. I thought you were your mom, you know. And he rolls back, yeah, and he rolls back over. But he was trying to
Surprise.
continue, yeah, he was trying to continue the abuse, is what he was trying to do.
Oh,
And he would say various things. My family would trigger me when we would go visit. When I was going to college, we'd come down from Moscow, Idaho to Nampa, Idaho to visit, and they would trigger me. And this would leave me in a bad way for several days. And so then there were other things that happened when I was away from my family before I started to remember, because they were always trying to bring me back and continue my programming. And so they take these children, and then now they're useful to the CIA. For me, I was used, like you mentioned earlier, for getting rid of folks that the government, the Satanic Elite, the Pentagon, the White House, the CIA wanted gone, needed gone. Even just people that I don't quite understand all the dynamics. I don't. And so, but I was made to make people go away. I was also used a lot in pornography as a child. And some of this pornography was made with my family, and some of it was made for Bird himself. You know, not that he wanted to watch it, but he made money on it. And so I was used for things like that as well. I was also being placed in some kind of position in the Mormon church. We talked about that in our last meeting, and that is interesting. So they use us all over. They use us also in politics. Some of those folks there in Washington, those are trauma-based mind slaves, and they're doing what they're told. And some of them are trauma-based mind slave handlers, and they're also doing what they're told. And some more of those people you can read about in Kathy O'Brien's work, such as the Romneys, the Clintons, the Leahy, Senator Leahy, he's in Vermont. And so you can read about those various individuals. We're also used in Hollywood. Hollywood is it's a social engineering tool that the Satanic Elite and the Central Intelligence Agency are well aware of the power that they have through that medium. They're able to create a social framework of reality through Hollywood. And so they work hard at controlling it. I knew personally Leonardo DiCaprio. I met him a couple times. He was an interesting individual, a lot of pain in his life, but he was an interesting individual, and he was a person too, I will add. and he could be a nice person. He could be a real asshole too, but he could be a real nice person. And so they use us in all kinds of different things. They also use us in the music industry, country music industry, but not country music industry alone, also rock, any rap, any industry where they can make money and generate their social agenda, that they will use you. And so I hope that that has provided somewhat of a description of what MK Ultra is. I also have on my website an essay I wrote, What is MK Ultra? And folks can go there and read that at my website, more.Monarch.com. And that will probably give you a clearer definition. But I hope that I have defined that somewhat, Emma, in in that.
You did great. And I appreciate you putting together that big picture because I think even people that understand what it is, it's such a big, like you said, every single industry, there's nothing that's exempt from being controlled. You know, anything that we can
Oh,
see that's on TV, that gets publicized, that gets elevated, that's in a magazine, like it's all engineered to create our reality. And I think people
yeah,
get so swept up in believing the reality that it's hard to take in what MK Ultra is and to the extent that it goes because it's just such a big picture to put together and you did a really beautiful job explaining how it starts on a micro scale with these experiments that they're doing with children and then how it
yeah,
expands into this network whether it's generational families or the media or all of it so thank you so much for doing that was extremely helpful.
nice. Right on. Yeah, so it's everywhere. And it's not just here in the States, it's global. We have people, CIA assets that are mind slaves all over the world. I can remember watching, seeing them all on camera, on video screens in what I call my grandfather's command center, the family lair under Disneyland. This is under the Alice in Wonderland ride. I mentioned it before and and yeah, they have people all over the world. And so the people that are involved with this, as we've talked about, are the CIA, the White House is aware of it, the Pentagon's aware of it. But it also reaches down from there and it goes clear down into state and local governments. My children, I do not want them, for example, attending public schools because I was put through um, I don't want to call it trauma-based mind control programming because it wasn't traumatic per se, but it was human bioprogramming nonetheless. And that involved a room that was in the school I attended, Sunny Ridge Elementary, and this was a room that was back in a part of the school that wasn't well observed, and it was a room that only the teacher, the federal worker who ran this room was allowed to go in, and it had cubicles in it, and we'd be taken from our regular class to this other class, which was just a special reading class of some kind or something. And then from there, we'd be taken from that class to this other room where we would be put through programming sessions. I had a what is it, a sand dial. You'd go in, you'd sit down in your little cubicle, and there was this little thing that had headphones, and you would turn on your headphone thing, put it on, but you didn't hear anything. I remember the first time I put them on, I looked at the woman who worked in there and I said, I can't hear anything though. And she said, well, you're not supposed to. What your ears are hearing and your mind is hearing it, but you won't hear it. But leave them on and leave it turned on until my sand dial had run its course. And so you'd put on these headphones and you'd turn over your sand dial there in your little cubicle and you had a file. And in that file, I haven't been able to understand, Emma, what was in that file exactly. I work at it, but I haven't been able to completely comprehend that. But you'd work through a file And that file, it was your file. And every day you just open it and it was where you'd left off the day before. And so I would be taken even in the public school to these things. And so I don't let my kids go to public school. I don't trust public school system. The superintendent knew about it. I can remember being escorted to this class by that individual. I don't remember his name, but my grandfather had a great deal of control in the Boise Valley because of his position with the Central Intelligence Agency. So people like that are looked at as assets. There's assets all over the place that they want to use. And these are people that when they need something, they can ask for it and they can get it. And so there's people on all levels of government and in our societies that are assets.
Were you involved with the like gifted and talented programs?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know the answer to that. I know that I went to some different classes. I was taken to various classes, but I think that they said I had a learning disability because, well, because I was being abused horribly at home. And I was all messed up all through high school. I got horrible grades, Emma. They were awful. I think I had a 1.7 GPA by the time I graduated. Just terrible. But when I went to college and I was away from my abuse base, I was just away from them. I didn't even begin to remember these things. My GPA, I graduated with I want to say a 3.8. And so the mind was there, but it was so abused that it was difficult to exist in daily life as a child. And so there were signs through my childhood that people could have recognized, and some people did. One man did, I know, but he ended up dead because he figured it out.
Oh
And
my
so,
God.
yeah, that was a bad deal. These things are kept very secret in a very tight circle, and it's very dangerous. I don't know how to explain to folks that if you do figure out a network or you start to learn things, you have to be careful. So even you, Emma, you have to be careful because these people will kill and they will dispose of individuals that are a problem. And so that is something that survivors and those who assist us have to be aware of. Someone else that I would like to mention who's involved with these things is the Satanic Elite. We've discussed them a little bit. I've mentioned them, but these are the elite families, the families that I personally um, had contact with and witnessed them enduring the same mind control programming I was the Ford family in particular. I can remember they were at the most dangerous game when I was made to play that, when I was made to do that and be involved in that in Oklahoma. And the Hiltons were also there at that game in Oklahoma. The Hilton girls, Nikki and Paris, were both there. And so the Disney family is also involved, and I know that because of all the programming that takes place with Disney and Disneyland. My grandfather, he told me stories about Disney. He'd met Walt in his lifetime, and Walt was well aware of the project, and he would even give the CIA places and availability in the park to to put spaces for Monarch programming. He was well aware of it. And so the Satanic Elite are also involved with this. I'd like to mention, too, that those satanic families, it's an interesting dynamic because the CIA, well, they're always trying to hold their place in the world, one might say, even among the Satanic Elite. And so I was a CIA asset, but I played the most dangerous game with Nikki and Paris. And during the games, one of them had become injured, and I tried to help those girls. And after that, it didn't end well for me or for them. I don't believe. I didn't see what happened to the girls after I was made to run, because my grandfather started shooting at me, or shooting above my head to make me run, because he later told me that Mr. Hilton would have shot me if I had gone to help the girls. And so I was made to run, my cousin and I. But I would be put into a relationship with Nikki Hilton, and we were supposed to have gotten married. I was engaged to her, and so they tried to place us in various families and positions in order to maintain control of various individuals. It's difficult to explain. There's a lot of deception involved too. You know, nice folks aren't the only one who are going to watch this video. The CIA are going to watch it, and or people in the agency, and some of the satanic elite will watch this video. And so you people need to be aware that there's a lot of deceit going on amongst you. Your plans won't always work out. So there's a lot of folks involved. Another group that's involved, various groups, is religious structures, Emma. There's also, I was raised in Mormonism, and Mormonism, it was a part of our life growing up. It was everything. I mean, we were Mormon. That's what we were. And we were a big family. I had four siblings, and then my parents, that made seven of us. We were raised Mormon, and my involvement was with Hinckley and Monson. We talked about Hinckley and Monson before, and Airing. And so those folks are not good people. And they know about trauma-based mind control programming to a certain degree. Not all of them know as much as some of them know, but they know. When we gave a presentation for Hinckley, he didn't quite understand it all before the presentation, before he'd been the president of the church. And when he was the president of the church, he had the authority and the need to know. And so we did a presentation for him on the CIA's trauma-based mind control project.
Wow.
Yeah, so religion is a big part of programming. It's a big part of that. And they even use it as a bind. I'd like to talk about binds for a moment, because binds are a big part of trauma-based mind control programming. And these binds include family, the family bind, those you should be able to trust the most, but you can trust the least. I remember when I was a child, Em, I don't know if I ever told you this story, but when I was a child, we would go out to my grandparents' house out by Lake Lowell, and we would just stay there for a few days or for a week, me and my younger brother and my cousin usually. And we were the three that were being put through the project. And my grandfather was one of our handlers in the project, and he would abuse us and keep our programming going. But one day, I remember, we were out in front of his garage and we were talking, and he mentioned, or one of us said something about trust. And my grandfather, he looked at us three boys and he said, "You boys cannot trust anyone." And we were young, we were little kids. And I looked at my grandfather and said, "What do you mean, Grandpa? How can we not trust anyone?" And we said, "Well, can't we trust our parents? Can't we trust our relatives, our family? Because that's who you're raised to trust." So my grandfather gave us lots of clues throughout our life. He said, "No, you boys cannot trust your families. You cannot trust your relatives. You cannot trust your parents." And he said, "Let me tell you something about trust." And he told us a story about himself. of being a child and his father talking to him and saying, "Hey, do you want to play a game?" Great grandpa's name was Sherman, and Sherman asked my grandfather. So great grandpa asked my grandpa, "Want to play a game?" And he was just a little boy, and he said, "Sure, Dad. What are we going to do?" And he says, "Well, I want you to climb up on the roof, on the eave of the roof, and I want you to jump off, and I'm going to catch you." And so this is the story that my grandpa was telling us as little kids. And he says, "Go up there and jump off, and I'll catch you." And so my grandpa, trusting his father, climbed up on the roof and jumped off, and Sherman caught him. Great grandpa caught him. And then he put him down and he said, "Now, wasn't that just so much fun?" And grandpa said, "Yeah, that was great fun." And he says, "Now go up and go to the middle of the roof and jump off, and I'll catch you." And so my grandfather climbed up to the middle of the roof and he jumped off, and my great grandfather caught him. And oh, what fun, Grandpa said that was. That was just so much fun. And great grandpa put him down and he said, "Now, wasn't that fun? Now, how much more fun would it be to jump from the peak of the roof?" And my grandfather said, "Well, boy, that would be just about the funnest thing in the world." And so he went up to the peak of the roof and he jumped off. Well, great grandpa didn't catch him. He let him hit the ground, whammo, on the ground. And he was laying there in pain and confusion. And he said that my great grandpa looked at him and said, "Never trust anyone, never trust anybody." And he walked away and left my grandfather there. And so this was a story, yeah, that my grandpa told us when we were little kids about trust. So he was always giving us little clues about these things, but it was difficult as a child to piece these things together because part of the MK Ultra programming I failed to mention, Emma, is they do have it down to a scientific formula, and part of that formula is we talked about trauma with the point of dissociation, but something that I didn't talk about was hypnotism, which is used extensively in the project. Some folks may think this is silly if you're hearing this for the first time, but it's not. It's very serious. When you are put into a point of disassociation, you are already in a state of trance. And so to take that trance deeper through hypnosis and to help to communicate with the subconscious mind and keeping those things secret, which you just went through, are key. Another key to the scientifically induced amnesia, because not only do they want children who are multiples who will do anything they tell them to do, they also need these individuals, these children, to never remember what they were made to do. The trauma helps with that, the hypnosis, and then electrocution. They will use an electric taser and hit you with a taser to compartmentalize that memory. And they find a spot on your body, and that's where they're going to hit you forever, is in that spot. Sometimes they get mixed up, and you'll be with someone else, like Bird even messed up once in a while, and he'd hit my left thigh instead of my right thigh. And so they do screw up sometimes, but for the most part, you're supposed to be hit in that specific location.
Can I ask you real quick, JR, going off what you were saying, sort of along these lines of handlers and victims essentially, um,
Yeah,
how do you know, for example, Senator Byrd, how many slaves did he own? Was there like a number that these people had, or how, I mean, because it seems like they handled, a lot of people at once. So I'd be curious if you knew that answer. I don't know if you do.
I think that's a really good question, Emma. That's an excellent question because you've opened the door. Yes, they do own multiple slaves. So I was just one of Senator Byrd's slaves. One. There were many. Some of my friends were Senator Byrd's slaves. We were marked. When you're one of Byrd's slaves, you're going to be marked, and you will know by these marks that you were one of Byrd's slaves. You will have on your left arm, this is where mine are, two dots. And those two dots represent U dot S dot. You are U.S. government property. And then in your right wrist, there will be a scar that you will find that will go through your wrist. You will see it on the top and on the bottom. And I have pictures of these scars on my website because they are so important. I can remember. So I don't know your answer, Emma. I'm
Okay.
sorry. But I do know that Byrd owned a lot of folk. Larry Byrd, for example, was one of Byrd's slaves, as silly as that may sound, Larry Byrd. But Larry Byrd was one of Byrd's slaves. They own slaves in sports, in music. They make money on them. They make money on these people. They own them. They're slaves. And so they earn money on them. And they try to own, I would imagine, but Byrd owned a lot of slaves. Yeah. So they own lots of folks and they put lots of folks through trauma-based mind control programming. I'm not sure the exact number of how many people have been put through trauma-based mind control programming, but an awful lot of them. Yeah. Does that answer your question, Emma?
Yep, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah. It's too bad, but it is what it is. And the sooner that the world can learn these things, the better off the world will be because it's a mind bender, but it's just too bad that that's what they're working with. They know it's a mind bender. They know it.
Exactly.
It's hard for people to get their head around.
Especially because they're children too,
Yeah, yeah. Children are extremely vulnerable. And so that leads me to something I wanted to talk about is where are all these things happening? Because you have who, where, when, what, why. The where of this is this is happening to children in their families. That's where it starts. Is the family. I was abused by my father, my grandfather, my uncle, and various individuals in the family. And this is what's happening to a lot of other survivors. You can read about them. And people I knew in Project Leo, I remember his father, I was told his father was a monster. And my father was nothing compared to Leo's dad. But I feel bad for Leo because my dad was a monster. So the family is used in this as a mental bind. That's who you think you should be able to trust from childhood. It's who you're raised with. It's who you're conditioned to be with and accept their concepts and realities. And so that is something that they use quite extensively. It's also being used, as I mentioned earlier, this is not something that's new, trauma-based mind control. The CIA has just scientifically enhanced it. So there's a lot of Satanist groups out there. My family was involved with the Satanic Network there in Nampa, Idaho. And that Satanic Network was hiding in the Mormon church. The Mormon church isn't just controlled by Satanists, it's controlled by Satanists, but there's also little networks of Satanists all through the church. And so you have various groups in various locations, and those groups are all vying for position within the communities and within their network and the larger network. These are networks of Satanists that go all the way from local communities, neighbors, people in churches you might be sitting next to. I'm not trying to scare folks, but they need to be aware. Not everyone's nice, not everyone's good. You have to constantly be paying attention, not paranoid, but paying attention, living with your eyes wide open, not wide shut. And your mind has to be open to empathy and to understanding and to God's spirit and God's will as well, because God will lead you if you pray diligently to Him. I have prayed so much, Emma, since I confess I didn't pray enough before I started to remember these things. I was raised Mormon and I started to move away from the church after I moved away from my family and had been married. So I didn't pray enough. I had been through a bad experience at church. For a time, I was even an atheist and an agnostic. I consider myself a Christian right now because that is the closest system to my beliefs in this life and in the death to come. So, so they use churches and religious structures, and the satanic network is extensive. It is so extensive. And another thing that they use that I'd really like to talk about is churches when they are being used and their facilities are being used, who's paying for it? The people paying for it are good people usually. A lot of people in church are good people and they don't know about these bad things going on that the church will be using money for. Government is the same way. In our government, there is this entire population of people paying taxes to our federal government, our state government, our local governments, but we have very little control on where that money's going. So these things are paid for by taxpayer dollars, apparitioned to these various agencies through our government. Not all of them, not all programming locations are governmental. Disneyland, for example, is a huge enterprise that involves the Satanic Elite and it involves the CIA. A lot of folks that come out of programming out of Disneyland, they could go to Hollywood, they could go to the music industry. They might not be owned by the CIA, but the CIA runs its program through there as well. So it's a complicated dynamic. But then you have literal government facilities. This includes schools, as I mentioned, Sunny Ridge Elementary School, but then also military bases and military facilities, as well as agencies that are set up to look like, for example, an energy agency, and their job is just works around energy. uh, INEL is a good example of this. I was put through suicide programming at INEL, and that is Idaho National Environmental Laboratories. I'm not even sure if that's the name of it anymore. I don't think it is. I think it's INL now. It's always changing. But this is located just outside Idaho Falls. In Idaho, it's about 40, what is it, 35, 40-minute drive from Idaho Falls. And it's out there in the desert to the west, just to the northwest. And that place, yeah, there's stuff going on out there that's things that an energy agency should be involved with. But within that structure, is monarch programming, is human bioprogramming. I was put through suicide programming there after I'd been made to be in the presentation for Hinckley. And so Hinckley, and they're all terrified you're going to talk. This was not the only time I was put through suicide programming. They're always terrified. There's so many layers that you have to work through on that suicide programming. It's difficult. So I pray for every survivor that has to work through that they should all just remember, um, I was always told I should go to bed. if I ever had been triggered and no one was there to help me to make me forget to trigger me back, then I would go to bed. I'd have to go to bed. And when I'd wake up, I'd feel better and I'd be closer, if not in my base personality. And so that's a little trick that I have where if I get switched, I go to bed. And that helps tremendously. So it really helps you work through it. But after I'd been made to do the presentation for Hinckley, I was made to go through suicide programming because they're terrified of you ever remembering. And this involved being put in depth tanks. And we had these wetsuits, Emma, that were specifically fit to our bodies. I'd been measured for this suit it was in between Ketchum and Haley. I was staying at my uncle's house, and for some reason we went to the doctor with and and I was measured at that appointment for my suit, and so this suit was specifically fit to my body. It was super tight to get on. But this programming, though I digress, it took place at Idaho National Environmental Laboratories there outside of Idaho Falls. And my friend Chris, who was also involved with the presentation, his father was was the one who took us there. He worked there, and it was supposed to be Kids Day there, but it wasn't Kids Day. It was Kids Day, I suppose. They put us through some terrible shit there. We went in, we were taken in, and we were they acted like it was fun, like it was really Kids Day, and it was incredible. What there is there is there's a building that has an I don't know how many depth tanks were in that room. There were several, at least 40 or 50 depth tanks in that room. And with all those depth tanks, they could program you on an individual basis, or they could program entire military and special ops units to be able to work together. A lot of people understand that ants have the ability to telecommunicate with each other, to communicate without words. And they understand how to do that. When you've been put through that programming, it doesn't last forever. It's not like you're put through it and you're forever connected to those individuals, but it lasts for a time, I would say a couple weeks from what I can recall. And so they're able to program entire military units to be able to think together. I can remember one time being linked with, I call it the mind link. I was mind linked with a friend of mine at work. He was a trauma-based mind slave as well. I'm not sure if the CIA owned him, but I know he was a trauma-based mind slave because we worked together in Ketchum. This was when I was with Loomis, and we were put through a mind link. That happened at a Christmas party. We were supposed to be at a Christmas party, a company Christmas party, and we went to the facility there in Ketchum. This is the same facility I was put in a mind link with my cousin and my younger brother years earlier. So, and then me and Travis worked together really well. I'll tell you what, after we had a mind link, my goodness, we were very productive at work, I have to say, because we were able to know what the other person was thinking and just work like one mind. It's interesting. They're able to do this. So this is what's being done at INEL out there in the desert. They're able to do this. When I was taken out there, though, I was put through in 95, spring of 95, suicide programming, and we were made to strip down naked. And you just strip down naked right there in front of everyone. It's not like go in this room. No, it's your government property. You are literally government property. And in your mind, they will put you into a state of mind where you are government property. And so we just strip right there in front of everyone, and it doesn't matter. You're just an asset. And I was made to put on my suit, my wetsuit, which had been measured. for me, specifically for my size. And it was tight, I'll tell you what, but they needed those electrodes. The suit is covered in electrodes that they're able to connect wires to and then send electrical currents and pulsations through your body at the speed and pulse that they want to. And so we put on the wetsuits and then we climbed up the ladder, and there were these two dudes there. They were twins, actually, and they had worked on these systems, the electrical system that they hooked me up to. They worked with this, and I want to say that they even put it together. John C. Lilly, he designed the tanks. I'm not sure how much he was involved with the invention and the design of the electrical systems. But the electrical system, so you got up on top of the tank and there was a platform up there, and they hook you up to these electrodes. They'd hook up a bunch of wires, and they were all over your body in the wetsuit, down your legs and up on your torso and over your heart and on your back. And there were several of them. And then you'd put on a mask so you could breathe and goggles, and then you'd get in the tank and you'd settle down into the tank. Well, when they had me settle down into the tank, they started to take me through various electrical currents. And so they started out giving me electrical currents that it wasn't so bad. You know, you knew you were getting hit, and then my God, they started hitting you with them. And it was a game that they made me play, and it developed in intensity as it went. The game was you weren't allowed to move. They said, this is the game. We're going to play a game, and you're going to have to hold still, because they were getting me ready to stop my heart and to take my body to that level where they could stop it and then they could restart it. And so we played this horrid game, Emma, where you couldn't move or you got hit wherever that location was that you moved. And so I just got the shit shocked out of me, because you'd think, oh, I can hold still, I can do this game, but no, it was any movement, any, and you can try to not move, but it's really hard. And so I got the shit shocked out of me. And then after the game finally ended, when it got to where I just couldn't move, I mean, they had shocked me to the point where I couldn't hardly move. Then they took me through the process of stopping my heart. And I was told through this, I was in a state of trance by the time they'd shocked the living hell out of me. And they instilled in my subconscious what this was all about. And this was about, if I ever talked and remember, if I ever remembered and talked about the things I was involved with the CIA, I would stop my own heart. My subconscious mind, I would be fed a trigger by an individual and my heart would stop. I would die. I would kill myself. And so they don't give spies pills anymore. You don't typically give a spy a pill. The spy will kill himself if he's discovered. This is a technology that they're using in the agency. And so it's called suicide programming. And so they took me through the process of telling me these things and entering them into my subconscious and then stopping my heart. And that hurt like hell to die, to just die. I mean, my God. And then I died, Emma, and I floated out of my body, and I was above the tanks in the room. In the project, I'd been forced out of my body before, and so I was used to this. But there I was, and the tunnel came, and I knew I was dead. Maybe I talked to you about this before, but I knew I was dead at that point because it scared the shit out of me. I'd been forced from my body, but always brought back into it, never taken away. And here comes this tunnel of light like a freight train behind me, and I could see it coming. And it just scared the shit out of me. I was like, oh no. And I tried to communicate with the people below me, guys, because in the project, you're so messed up. Your personalities are so messed up. You don't understand how wrong it all is. And so, but at times you would understand how wrong it was. When you were forced from your body, you could begin to gain an understanding of it. But I was scared shitless, and I was yelling at them or trying to yell at them. I was out of my body, so they couldn't hear me, they couldn't see me. And then I was taken, and I was taken away. They had killed me, they had stopped my heart through their programming, and my spirit and my soul were taken. And I was taken to the most beautiful, the most beautiful place you can ever, ever imagine. It's hard for me because folks pass away, they leave us, but I know they went to a place that is so much nicer than here. You go home. You go home when you pass away, and it's a beautiful place. And so I was taken to this beautiful place. This was probably the nicest thing the CIA ever did for me, was kill me for a short time. Because there I was able to see the other side. You can read about that experience through my journaling, and I talk about being on the other side, being dead. It's a beautiful world. It's built of energy. The energy there is light and truth and beauty. Everything is live. Everything emanates energy and has soul, and you can feel it and you can see it. And I was taken. A man came to see me because I wasn't supposed to be dead. You don't die until it's your time to go. And so they came. This individual came and he said, what are you doing here? You're not supposed to be here. What are you doing? And he asked me, and he was very concerned because he was afraid that I'd committed suicide. You're not supposed to commit suicide. This is a sad thing, but you can't do it. Just if anyone in the world is ever considering it, don't do it. You have to ride the ride through to the end, no matter what, because on the other side, it's very frowned upon. I don't understand what happens to folks who have killed themselves, but you don't want to go down that. And I told them I hadn't killed myself. It's a little surprising to me that they didn't know that I what I was in, because I had to explain. I had to tell this individual. This was my uncle. This was my Uncle James. He was my guardian. He was my guardian angel for a while. And this isn't the first time. I don't believe this was the first time that I have ever seen him. It definitely wasn't the last. And he said, what are you doing here? Did you kill yourself? And I said, no. He said, they sent me here. They stopped my heart and they sent me here. And he told me I had to come with him and I had to talk to some people there that were in what we would consider to be a city. Didn't walk to the city. We didn't just all of a sudden flash to the city. He took my hand and he said, come, I'll take you there. And we flew. We lifted off of the ground. He had to hold my hand because I couldn't remember yet how to do these things in this place. This place that I was my home. This place that I was is where I came from before I came here. This place is where we all came from. And when we pass away, we'll go home there. This is just a short trip here. We'll go home again. And he took me to this city, and I could see the city from a long way off because it made so much light. Everything there is light and energy, and you can see it and you can feel it. And he took me there, and we flew down into the city, and people are just, they're flying around there. That's how they get around. And we landed in front of what I would consider to be a public building. It's interesting that they have these kinds of things in the afterlife, but it was a public building, is the only way I can describe it. And the architecture of it was absolutely incredible. It is undefined on Earth. The style, it's interesting to me because the style I would define as a Greek style with columns, um, post and lintel style, uh, very Greek in its architectural form, but the buildings themselves were made of a stone that was translucent. You could see through it. And all the light that came out of that building, these buildings just emanated light, just emanated this beautiful energy and light. And that energy and that light came from the spirits and the souls inside of that building. That is where that light came from. I don't know if that particular material manif or enhanced that. I don't believe so. I think it just let it shine through. And so I was taken in this building. And when I went in this building, Emma, it's incredible to me because I was met there by a lot of people. When you pass away and you go back to when you go home, everyone will hear about it, and everyone's going to come and see you because they haven't seen you for a long time, and you're there, and they come to see you, and they came to see me. Some of the people that came to see me, when you're in the project, you're made to do things that are horrible, horrible. You're made to kill people. I was made to kill a lot of people in my life. I killed, I know that I killed over 20 people in my lifetime. I know this, which is awful to bear. But some of those people that I'd been made to kill came to see me when I was dead. And I was there in that building because they knew that I would have never done what I was made to do to them if I wasn't who I was and I wasn't made to do what I was made. And so it was incredible to be forgiven by those individuals. And I made it finally. We went into this room and I had to meet with this guy. I don't remember who he was. I think I know who he was, but I don't want to be wrong. And I met with this individual. He is a servant, I would say a servant of God, but when I say that, a servant of God serves all of the children of God. This man served, he lived to serve. And so I talked to him for a while, and all the spirits that were with me who'd come to see me were allowed to come inside. We all just went into this room and we just saw this guy. We talked for a short time, and I told him why I was there. And then they told me I had to leave, that I had to go back. And I didn't want to go back. I said, no, I don't want to. I'm not going back there. I'm home. Why on earth would I go back there? He said, no, you have to. And and then I was just pulled back. I don't remember much of how I got back. And I was floating again above my body, above the depth tanks. In heaven, everything is light. I tell my wife this. Everything is light and so radiant and so beautiful. And on this earth, it's so dense, so without color. There's so much gray here in comparison to there. And so I went from that beautiful place back to this earth and this plane, and it was very dark and very gray to me, particularly inside that building, in that dark place with those dark scientists and those dark people. And wham, they hit the electrodes down there. I could see them working their control panel. You could see all this happening from where I was. But I want to add, my friend Chris Knudsen was going through the same programming I was. They fired up the two tanks to run us through this programming. And so Chris was being programmed in this other tank. And when I came back, something was going on with that tank. And Chris was flailing around and he was having a really hard time. And I could tell something was happening. And then wham, I was pulled back into my body. And that is when it really hurt. It hurt like hell because to have your heart stop and then wham, oh my God, they kicked my heart on again. And so I just went from being dead, being in the most wonderful place you can ever imagine, being out of my body in my spirit, to being pulled back into my body. It hurt like hell. And I was brought back up out of the water, and there was great duress going on. It wasn't like, hey, get out, let's take these off, because Chris damn near died in the tank over next to me. He damn near died, and his father was there, and it was a horrible, horrible scene to come back to. And they were able to save him. They were able to get him out of there. They got us out of the tanks and they got us disconnected and they got Chris disconnected. Chris tore the living shit out of that tank, which really, it was incredible the reaction of those twins. One of them had some empathy and he even helped carry Chris to the doors to get out of the facility, and the other one was just pissed because his device had been destroyed by Chris flailing around in the water. He had some kind of seizure when they were bringing him back, and it was a terrible experience. And he damn near died. And then we just took him out to the car and put him in the car, and he still wasn't conscious hardly. He had almost come around some, and then he went unconscious on the drive, and then he finally came back conscious later. But his father was a horrid individual. The night before all of this, he knew that we were both CIA mind slaves. See, this guy, Knutson, he sold his son, hid both of his sons to the CIA. He's a pedophile. He molested me and Chris the night before. Disgusting individual. These people are sick. They don't mind hurting people. They don't mind contributing. Their contribution to the project is their family. Their contribution to the project is their children. And so something I want to add to MK Ultra is they're not just looking for children, they're looking for their abusers. They need to find abusers too, because they need those abusers to continue the abuse, and they train these abusers with how to abuse these kids. And so you have to be careful who you work with because you might not know all their motives on what they're looking to do with their organization. And they'll even use organizations um, and manipulate them for that goal and that aim. And so you have to be careful. So these things are happening at government facilities, schools, environmental agencies, government money. It's government money. Wherever you have government money, it's done in military facilities. Fort Worth, Texas, there was a special place there for programming. Bird took me there when I was in 1993. We went to a facility there outside of or in Fort Worth. I forget. It was over there at Fort Worth, and it was a naval base. And Bird, he told the guard we were his grandkids. It was night, and he was taking us there, and it was the Navy guard. he had his ID and we had our military IDs because Byrd had them made for us. You can read about that in the Star Trek convention on my website where I talk about that journal entry. This guy named Jamie, he made those cards for Byrd so that he could get us into military facilities. And so we were programmed that night by Byrd there in Fort Worth. I went through music programming for singing, and then Byrd chipped me that night. He put a chip in me. I haven't been able to get to a doctor. This has been on my mind because I'd like to locate this thing and get it out of my body. But he chipped us and he put us through voice programming. They wanted us to be involved with the country music industry because my grandfather had been involved with the country music industry. I mentioned that before. He was played the role of Jim Reeves in the country music industry. Can't believe everything you hear in the media. You just can't. People play roles for them to make money and for social engineering purposes. And then they kill them off, that character. They need them gone. Another place I should mention, um, this facility has changed some over the years, but they're in Memphis, Tennessee. I was taken there. See, after I'd been sold by Byrd, I don't know if I mentioned that before, Emma. After I'd been sold by Byrd, Byrd, he'd manipulate you and he would say, well, you have to pay off that debt now. And so I was made to be in pornography. The one time that really stands out for me was in Memphis, Tennessee, the one about the Star Trek convention. And that was at a military base. That's how we were able to make those military ID cards, is it was at a military facility. And so they control these facilities. You just need a key to the door and no one to be there and understand how to turn off a camera system and gain access. And so it's too bad. And so what the CIA used me for is they used me for pornography, for making money. They used me in porn for programming. A lot of times when I would be used in porn, at Disneyland in particular, you'd always encounter people that were dressed in one-piece suits with a hat on that would say NASA. And so NASA, everyone loves to talk about NASA. NASA, they're going into space. My ass, NASA is into inner space. Those sons of bitches are involved with mind control. They may be involved with some things in outer space. I don't know the answer to that, but I know they're involved with trauma-based mind control and trauma-based mind control programming. And I would be made to make videos with these individuals from NASA that would be dressed up like individuals from NASA. And so there's a lot of government people involved with these things. It's incredible the extent to which it's gone. One of the greatest analogies I can find, so Star Wars, Emma, is used in trauma-based mind control programming. Star Wars the film is often used. Alice in Wonderland was used in my programming, Batman, these various things. Star Wars is a great example that a lot of people can relate to. The Sith Lord, I forget what Sir Evilness was named. This is in the later episodes, and where he took over the Senate and he was in charge of the whole galaxy or the universe or whatever it was. Well, that's how they do it. They get control of everything. And now they have, when you control the government, you control its money. You control its assets. You can do what you want with it. You even have this government payrolled agency guarding you, these people who take care of you. It's all on the people's bill. and you're able to use that money to further research in dark things such as trauma-based mind control and apparition that money and then hide it under things like the 1947 National Security Act and the 1949 Central Intelligence Agency Act. You can hide how much shit has been hid under those laws. My God, when I tried to get my records from the agency, I've been trying for years. And finally, after being in, oh, what is it, the appeal process for months and months, they finally send me a letter saying, well, you've been denied in full. We are not going to give you anything. My God, I'm just so frustrated at these individuals. It's all hidden, they tell me, under the 1947 National Security Act and the Central Intelligence Agency Act of 1949, or whatever the hell it is. And so there is so many things that are hid um, through those mediums and with those laws. These satanic elite have taken control of the government. The CIA works with them. The CIA's in bed with them. The Mountain is a good example of this. A lot of folks should read next time we're together. I'm probably running out of time, Emma, but the next time I'd like to talk about The Mountain because and the Trinity Underground complex there, because it is a place which is funded by government money, a government facility under the mountain there where they allow satanic rituals to occur. And the rituals that occur there are beyond horrific. They are beyond horrific. They are beyond satanic. They are horrible. And our government is involved with guarding these rituals for these satanic groups that are around the world because my grandfather explained to me that it's better to control them and to be able to handle them than to try to destroy them. Because these satanic groups, you try to destroy them. He explained to me how throughout history they had tried to destroy them. Various entities and governments had tried to hunt them down, but they had always failed, and factions of it had always gotten away, always escaped, and those satanic groups would continue. For centuries and centuries and centuries, these satanic groups have been doing their evil deeds. I don't know how to describe it. And so I was made to guard a facility there in the mountain where one of these satanic rituals took place. And it was horrible. Yeah, that's a very long story. I ended up there because I was escorting my grandmother, who was also involved with trauma-based mind control programming. She was being taken to California. I escorted her to LA and escorted her to her hotel. We flew there in a what would be described as a private plane, just the two of us in a twin prop aircraft. And we were flown there, but this was paid for by government money. And she was there in LA to work on Tom Cruise. People have heard of Tom Cruise. Well, Tom Cruise is a mind slave. And my grandmother went there to work on his programming. He was working on that stupid movie, Mission Impossible. Just dumb movies they make. I can't watch them. But she was going there to work with Tom. We called him Tommy on his programming for that movie. She had to do some kind of programming for him. She was going to do it that night. And so I was taken by my uncle to go and do guard duty at the mountain on that night because I didn't have anything else to do. I just would have been hanging out. I couldn't, they didn't want me hanging out in the room while my grandma was programming Tom Cruise. So my uncle, we met actually at Disneyland because, well, I've talked about Disneyland. There's a lot of CIA facilities there. And I just pulled in and I talked to the folks at the gate. I went to the service entrance, the serve us entrance, And I went through the gate, the security. I said, I'm here to see so and so. And they said, okay, go ahead. It's over there. And they pointed out where I needed to drive to in that massive parking lot. And I just drove over there. And there was a door, another service entrance for getting down into the tunnel system. There's a tunnel system under Disneyland there we've talked about. And employees use that. They just park and go to the doors and then they get in and go do what they're supposed to do. It's a normal procedure at Disneyland. And so I met my uncle there, my handler, my Uncle Gail, and we went down into the tunnels. He came and got me. And then um, my grandfather was there too. He'd flown down, and John Lilly was there. I saw John Lilly that night, and I met them in the family layer there, the CIA command center that my grandfather worked out of. Um, there under the Alice in Wonderland ride at the base of the Matterhorn at a corner of it. You could always hear the ride going by up there, the roller coaster. So we hung out there for a little while. My uncle gave me some drugs. He did some cocaine. He was always doing coke. He was big into smuggling coke and doing coke. And and then he went to make sure our helicopter was getting ready because we were taking a helicopter and all these things, like I'm saying, are paid for with government money. This is all paid for with government funds. When I'd first gotten to California, my uncle met us at the airport, my grandmother and I, and he gave me $1,000 in cash and said, "You need to have this on you just in case." Yeah, a grand. He just said, "Here, put this in your pocket." And then a couple minutes later, he said, "Go buy yourself some sunglasses. You're in LA. You won't be able to see without sunglasses." And so I went and bought a pair of sunglasses, a pair of Ray-Bans. And I actually, those Ray-Bans, that's a long story because those came back to me later in life because they were stored at my grandmother's house in a drawer in the kitchen. And so that's a whole nother story. But my uncle, he took me, we caught a helicopter. Well, I talked to John Lilly and my grandfather. This is something people should know and understand, you know. I talked to my grandpa and John because John was in California for some reason. He was usually over in Hawaii. He worked with dolphins. He studied dolphins and their minds, and he worked on that a lot. But he worked on human bioprogramming as well and was involved in the trauma-based mind control program. And so he wanted to talk to me because I had been put through that suicide programming. He wanted to hear about what it was like to be dead and what I had experienced because I hadn't been able to tell him yet. I've known John for years. I had known John for years, and seen him off and on. I also had this crazy doctor, just as a side note, named Dr. Worth. I think he was an interesting individual. My parents always had trouble finding me normal doctors because they were always trying to hide the trauma and abuse that I was involved in. So, but anyways, I met with John Lilly and my grandpa because they wanted to hear about it being dead. And you know what I told them, Emma? They did not. I can't say that. It's not that they didn't like to hear it, though I suppose you could say that. It's just that they had lived their lives in such a evil way that I told them, I said, what you're doing is wrong. And they do not support that in on the other side. They are against it because that is what they had told me when I was over there. When I told them about the project and what I was going through, they were like, they were disappointed. You know, here on earth in this life, it's easy for us to get emotional and to get angry and to say, you know, like, I hate this person and I wish they would, you know, whatever. But on the other side, it's more disappointment. We're all brothers and sisters. I am.
That's totally fine. You can just pick up right where you left off.
That was interesting, though. What happened?
I don't know. I don't know what happened. Hopefully not.
Huh.
Hopefully, let's just pray it was an accident.
Yeah, it was an accident. But Anyway, I talked to John and I
Somebody doesn't
talked to
want you
my,
to tell this story, so you got to tell it.
yeah, I would imagine they don't. No, they're not going to want me to. And so I talked to John and I talked to my grandpa, and they really didn't like what I had to say because I told them how wrong it was, what they were doing, because they had told me to tell them. And when you're a CIA mind slave, you do what you're told. If someone says to you, how does that feel while they're torturing you, for example, you tell them. Or if it gets to the point, that's where it starts. And then it gets to the point where you will just tell them anything. I mean, when my uncle would ask me, whatever, any personal question, you'd answer it. So I told him. I told them what the people on the other side thought of it and that it was wrong and that what they were doing was wrong and that they should stop it. And I left them there. My uncle came back, and we left. We went and we got into our helicopter and we left Disneyland. And at that time, Disneyland had some construction going on. And so this helicopter was over in that construction area. I want to say it was over there by Toontown or something. I'm not sure entirely. But we took off in this helicopter, and I can remember being in this chopper and looking out the window at the people looking at us taking off, Emma, and saying to my uncle, because we had a headset on, and I said, they can see us. They're looking at us. There's people looking at us like, is this okay? And he said, well, dude, helicopters take off here from here all the time. This is Disneyland. This isn't Nampa, Idaho. And so we took off, and my uncle, he was hungry, and we still had a little bit of time. And so we stopped in LA at this building. We flew to it, and we landed on the roof. And we got out, and my uncle told the pilot to come back and get us after X amount of time. I'm not sure how long. But see, this pilot, who was the helicopter pilot, Emma, had a student with him who was a female. This is how the CIA works. You want to get a flight to the airport from Disneyland. Okay, well, you need some way to launder that money and some way to hide this flight. So, what was going on? We jumped a flight on a helicopter where an instructor who was a compromised individual was giving a lesson to a student who was an individual in the project, a young woman, and we were catching a ride with them during their training session. And they would receive payment for it. This pilot would receive payment. But when we landed, my uncle told this pilot he gave the pilot some of her triggers, some of her sexual triggers, so that he could go and amuse himself through abusing her and maintaining her programming while we were having dinner. And so we left the pilot, he left, him and this young woman, and we went into this restaurant. It was at the top of a skyscraper there in LA. And there was something to do with the flamingo, some kind of flamingo. I don't remember what this place was called, but it was a very ritzy place. The bill at the end was like $500 or $600. It was so expensive for dinner for two, plus the fee for landing the helicopter on the roof. There was a fee associated with that. And so we had dinner, and I couldn't read the menu. My uncle had to order my meal because I couldn't read it. I was like, what are these things? I'm this I'm this young man who's used to, like, I don't know, a hamburger, from Idaho, a steak, a potato. So my uncle ordered for me, and we had our meal. And that's where I first remember meeting Leonardo DiCaprio, because he was there and he was in the bar. So we were eating, and out of nowhere, we heard this loud burst of laughter. And it was the funniest, most interesting laugh I'd heard in a while. I was like, what is that? Who is that person? And I turned around. Didn't quite recognize him, but my uncle turned around and he says, oh God, that's Leo. You know, my uncle knew Leo because my uncle was involved with his programming. And so we finished our meal, and Leo, he was over there getting drunk. My uncle told me how Leo had just turned 21 and he was really setting into drinking. He liked to go out and he liked to drink, but he didn't like to just drink. He liked to get drunk. You'd ask him, "What are you doing?" And he would say, "I'm drinking tonight." Like that's the premise of the night is I'm drinking. And so he was getting pretty shit-faced hammered over there. And so my uncle, he wanted to do something about this, you know, because in the CIA, Leo's a CIA mind slave. He's there to be used in Hollywood for social engineering purposes. And so we went over there and we talked to him. And my uncle introduced me to him. And I was left there with him for, oh, I don't know, 5, 10 minutes. We smoked a cigarette. The bartender let me sit with Leo. I was underage at the time. This was back in 1996. And he let me stay at the bar because I kept Leo quiet because I was a young man. And in the personality that I was in, I was just a young man. And, and that was it. And Leo, to me, was just a young man. And we just sat there and we talked to each other. And I talked to him in that time that I was there. And, and it was interesting to me that he seemed like he didn't get many opportunities like that to talk to someone who wasn't trying to manipulate him, to handle him. I talked to him for a while. We smoked a cigarette. Leo smokes a lot of cigarettes, or he used to, and I smoked one. Um, and I was under 18 at the time, and so, but I was still smoking there in the bar with Leo. And I talked to Leo, and I asked him why he was getting so drunk because I found it strange. I was a Mormon kid, this Mormon goody goody on one side, and then the CIA sleeper who's used for all kinds of awful things on the other hand. And I had lots of personalities for all those things. And so basically, when we left, my uncle came out of the bathroom and we left, and Leo left the bar. He said, I'm gonna go get my car. He said, call my car to the bartender. Because Leo didn't drive. He didn't drive. He had a driver. And so I've got to move a little bit. The sun is there we go. And so he had a driver, Emma. And so he had someone come to get him. And me and my uncle left. And when me and my uncle were leaving, my uncle looked at me as we were walking down the hall and he said, "What did you say to Leo?" And I said, "Well, what do you mean? What did I say to Leo?" He said, "What did you say to Leo?" He wanted to know because he was one of Leo's handlers. And they had never been able to get Leo to leave a bar and quit drinking before passing out before. When he had turned 21 and he got his mindset on drinking, good luck getting him to leave the bar. He had not ever left the bar. And they would work hard to get him to leave the bar. And so I was brought in again in the year, I want to say 2000, to a similar situation in Sun Valley, Idaho, where I was made to handle Leo. I was sent in to get him to leave the bar. It was that simple. And I was successful in that. But we got back in our helicopter from the restaurant and we flew to a place, Emma, called the Trinity Mountain Underground Complex. This is a top secret government facility that's located under what is referred to as the mountain. I believe that this mountain, I'm just going to say it, is Mount Shasta, located in Northern California. We went there. We flew the helicopter over to the LA airport where we got on a plane. This was a government chartered plane. This was the plane that took people from Los Angeles to the Nevada desert to work at Area 51. And so we were able to catch a ride on that plane because it was in between transports. And so the pilots were happy to make money on the side while they had dead time in their aircraft doing government work because they're still doing government work. And so the pilots are able to make extra money in this way as a pilot. And so we were able to fly on this plane, and we were the only ones on this plane. It was a big plane, and we were the only ones on there. And there was the pilot, two pilots up in the front. And we were taken to a landing strip that was at the base of the mountain. I'm not sure exactly where this was located. It gets a little muddled here for me. I think that we just went in some large doors. There was a waterfall. It was dark. It was strange to all of a sudden be high in the mountains and among the pine trees. And this waterfall coming down. And there was a large steel door, and there was some kind of scanner there. And I had to open the door. My uncle wanted me to open it because he wanted to make sure that my security clearances had been run through, because this was after I had been selected. This was after I had been selected by Dick Cheney for trauma or for Pentagon level black operations. I'd been cleared for Pentagon level black operations, CIA Pentagon level black ops. That means that I would work for the White House and the Pentagon and the CIA in their dirty work. He wanted to know that my security clearances had been run through. And so I was made to put my hand on the device and open the door. We went inside. We were inside of some kind of tunnel facility, and an individual came and met us there. And he was armed. He was armed with a submachine gun, and he was dressed in BDUs, and he was a military personnel. And he had on comms, a comm device, and he was there to meet us, to take us to where we needed to go. So I was taken by this man. My uncle came with me. This was at the mountain where I was going to pull security detail. I was just 17 at this time. I was 17 years old. And I was one of the youngest people that I know of who was cleared for Pentagon level black ops for the CIA, me and another individual, because Dick Cheney wasn't going to be doing tests anymore. And so my grandpa wanted to make sure that we were pushed through. Dick Cheney's a piece of dog shit. And he's the one who did the test for my for my Pentagon level black ops clearance. And so we were taken in the mountain up to up a stairwell. I'm not sure where exactly we went in the mountain, and we were taken finally to some kind of command center, you would call it. It was a room with another little room in it. It looked very thrown together. There was a video system, and there was a guy sitting at a desk in front of some monitors, and he had cameras that he was watching through the area that we were going to be guarding. We were guarding an area where it was circular in the mountain with the ceremony taking place in the middle. And this was a ceremony that took place in a giant room full of swimming pools, and different levels of those pools, and a slide coming from one level up above down to the pools below, various size pools. And this is what I was going to be guarding, was this area. And it was behind closed doors. And we talked to the CO there. My uncle said, well, first the CO was like, oh, great to have you two. And then he saw how old I was. And then my uncle told him he wasn't sticking around. And boy, oh, that guy was pissed. He was like, you're leaving me with the 17-year-old kid. Like, what the hell are you doing? And my uncle tried to explain, but they pretty much just yelled at each other, Emma. It's incredible the dynamics of those people, because they're all compromised. They're all pieces of human garbage. And so they just scream and fight and argue. And so there was this verbal battle. Well, finally, yes, they were going to let me stay. I was going to be a part of the detail. And I was put in a military uniform and given a submachine gun, an HK MP5. But the CO wouldn't give me any ammo. He was like, I'm not giving that kid ammo. He didn't even want to give me the gun. And so, but I knew how to handle that firearm. I had handled several firearms. I was trained in firearms from as far back as I can remember. I learned how to use firearms. And so it was a little surprising for me, like, what do you mean? What's the threat? How great is the threat and what is the need? And so finally I was sent out. My uncle left. My uncle told me while I was putting on my uniform, this is something I want to mention, is that he initially had told me he was going to stay and he was going to wait for the ceremony to end. He would do something else there in the mountain and then he'd leave with me. Well, he told me when I was getting dressed, you're going to have to be here alone. I've got to go. He said, I just heard that Britney Spears is being programmed in Bohemian Grove right now, and I want to go catch some of that. And he talked to me about Britney for a while. Yes, Britney Spears is a trauma-based mindset, and he wanted to go be involved with her programming and her. He's just a sicko, really. He just wanted to be involved with abuse in her. And then he talked to me about it. He was like, do you like Brittany? Would you like to, have sex with Brittany sometime? And I was a young man and I was a mind slave. And I was like, well, sure, I guess so, like, yeah. And so my uncle left that night and he went to Bohemian Grove. And he ended up having to go home early because his cover had been compromised and something had happened where his family was wondering where he was at because these people have to do all these things and keep it hidden from their families. And so he left me there alone and I guarded this facility. The CO put me with another young man who was a little older than me. And this young man led me to a spot the CO had told him to take me to in the facility and I was to guard two doors. There were doors there, and he left me there. But the young man was very concerned I didn't have bullets, Emma. This is something that is really important that people in America and all around the world should understand is that things are not always as we understand them. This individual, this young man I was with, saw I had no ammo. When he saw there was no magazine and no ammo in my weapon, he said, what are you doing? Why haven't you loaded your weapon? Where's your ammo? And I said, CO didn't want to give me any. He didn't want me to have any. And he became very concerned. He said, you cannot be in here without ammo. This is a dangerous place. There's a reason we are here guarding this facility. And he called the CO, and the CO said, no, I'm not giving him ammo. If he needs ammo, you're going to have to bring it to him when he needs it. And so I was basically just placed there as human eyes and a voice, and in case they needed me. Well, I stood there for quite a while. I can remember being there for some time, standing alone at that spot in the facility. This young man, one of the triggers that has been used on me in the past, and one of the triggers that is very important is slough. Don't slough off. That means a great amount in the mountain because in the mountain, there is some group, some entity, some thing. I don't know what it is, Emma, but the doors to the mountain don't only keep people out with nosy eyes, but it keeps in something very evil and very dark. I don't know what it is. It's called the slough. And one of the triggers is don't slough off. And that's what the young man told me. That's what we would say to each other in the mountain. And that meant don't get killed. I want to see you again. And so he told me don't slough off before he left me there. And then he left and he went to his guard post. Well, after a time, Emma, the shit hit the fan because one of the guards, another one, the detail, I'll be quick with my story. I'm sorry I've taken so long.
No, take your
But
time.
one
You're
of the
okay.
guards, okay, one of the guards, his programming broke. It broke. He snapped. And because he looked, we were not supposed to look at what was happening in the ceremony because it was so horrid and so awful. You could hear it happening in there. You could hear the screaming. You could hear the splashing sounds that are undescribable. But over the comms, all of a sudden, the CO would check in with you every so often, every 10 minutes. I'm not sure how often. How are you doing? You know, what's going on there? Standard protocol. Well, finally, this sound started coming over the comms of one of our people, one of our security team. And he was saying, we have to stop this. We have to end this. Do you people realize what's happening in there? We have to kill all of these people that are in this ceremony. We have to get rid of them. This is not right. You all have to join me. And he was trying to talk us all into uh, acting together as a team and taking out the people that were in the ceremony. So one of our the very security that was there to provide security over this group of people that were doing the ceremony became the threat. That became the threat. That's how twisted all this is. And that's why they use trauma-based mind slaves for details like this, because no sane-minded soldier would ever guard what we were guarding. I was the closest to this individual. I was directly across the ceremony through a set of double doors from this man. I was the closest. Didn't have any ammo, but I was the closest. And it was my job. It came over, the comm CO said, get your ass through those doors. I want you to move through the ceremony. I don't want you looking at anything. And I want you through the doors directly across from you now. And I did what I was told. I opened the door. I proceeded to run straight through the ceremony. I ran right through the middle of the damn thing, Emma. And what I could not help but see with my eyes what was happening. And it was horrific. I saw to my left, mostly what I saw was to my left, which were a group of what were the younger people in this group. I'm guessing children, sons of the individuals in the group, in a pool to my left, a smaller pool. Everything was covered in blood, everything, blood everywhere. And I looked and I saw these young men eating the bodies of human babies, eating them, freshly born. This is how evil and sick and twisted these things are. They were eating them. And I ran straight through the ceremony. And when I got to the other side, even though I was in an altar, I was shaken up some. And I was like, holy shit, where am I? Like, I closed the door behind me. And now directly in front of me was a guy with a submachine gun who wanted to go in the room and kill everyone. And he said, did you see it? Did you see what was happening in there? And he started to tell me, we have to go in there. We have to kill all those people. And so I didn't do much. I was mostly just a distraction. I walked a little closer to him. He and I got close. He was trying to talk to me. And then we heard two dudes coming down the halls because my job was to distract him. We were trying to prevent him from killing everyone in the room. So two more guys or more, I'm not sure. I didn't get to see because when he heard the other individuals coming, I was too close to him at that time for him to shoot me. And so he took his sub machine gun and he hit me in the head. He just took his weapon and smashed my head. And he hit me right here. And I've wondered, Emma, ever since I can remember this happening, what happened to my skull? Like what happened? Because it's deformed and it's mashed and it hurts. And I'm like, what is this? Well, it's because this individual tried with every strength in his body to kill me on that day. He hit me so hard, Emma, my body went to the ground and my spirit and my soul were forced from my body. I was pushed out. I was literally thrown out. You can read military accounts. veteran accounts of people having explosives go off near them. They will talk about how their spirits have been blown from their bodies. That man struck me so hard, he knocked my spirit and soul out of my body. I all of a sudden was standing outside my body and my body fell. And I could see the guy who did it get hit by the guys coming, and they just tackled him. And it was all happened so fast and was so traumatic. My spirit didn't know what to do. And I went through the door, Emma, that I had just come through where that ceremony was taking place. I went back into the ceremony. I would also argue that spirits are curious. And I wanted to see what the hell is going on. And I went in there and I saw everything that was happening in that space. What I saw was awful. There were several men, they were all men, and they were all Asian. I have nothing against Asian people. I have nothing against people of color. You can be whatever you are, and I will love you if you are a good person. These were bad people, and I'm simply telling you for public knowledge. They were from somewhere in Asia, and they were literally eating babies. They were eating children, Emma, that were being born at that very moment in time. They were being born. That is what the slide was for, is I went and I floated above this group of people in these pools that were just filled with blood. And you could see them eating these human children who had just been born. And I said, where are these babies coming from? And I went up to the upper level, and there were women giving birth at that moment in time. And the babies were being put on the slide, and they were being sent to these men. And this is what I witnessed. This group was so satanic and so evil. And these are the things that they were doing. And this is what they do. It's hard for the general population to understand how evil these sons of bitches can be, but it's bad. And so I finally went back and found my body. I didn't want to get lost. I was tempted to go down in another tunnel. I didn't know how to get back to my body. I went back to the doors where I had come in through, and then I wanted to go and find my body. They had taken it, and it was gone from where I had been struck. And so I had to go backtrack, and I ended up back in my body, and I made it home alive. And so there are places that are so evil and beyond our comprehension because they're so hidden from us that it's important that we talk about those things. But I probably need to wrap it up, Emma. And I just want to say, I've talked about a lot of bad things, but for all the survivors out there, you need to heal and work on healing if that is where you're at. That is really important. And that means all the world. And that's what this is about, is helping people understand these things, to accept these things, and to heal. And so Kathy O'Brien has done an excellent work called A Time to Heal. I would recommend that to anyone. And there's lots of books out there to help folks. The healing has to come from within. And you have to understand where you've been to understand where you're going. So thank you, Emma.
Thank you. That was a beautiful way to end. And I really appreciate you sharing those horrific memories. I mean, how do you even make sense of it? Like, my brain can't even compute it, but that is what's in our world, and people don't know it, and they're just walking around and don't even want to look at it. And meanwhile,
Yeah.
there's little kids that are still going through that same thing today.
Yeah,
and that's why we have to know about it. And that's why I really appreciate you sharing, even though I'm sure that that was really hard for you.
nice. Thank you, Emma.
And you want to tell people a little bit about your website and where they can find you, and I'll bring it up on the screen.
Yeah. So my website, when I started to remember these things, I realized it's really important to disseminate this information because that's the only way that I can perceive it's ever going to end, is if we all learn about it. It has to enter the human consciousness. And so I put together a website called Mormon Monarch, and on that site, you can find my homepage where I'll give you a quick synopsis. You can find a description of what MK Ultra is. I have an essay on who I am. And then there is my section of writings on past. And this is where I put down everything I can remember that I am comfortable with talking about, that I am confident in talking about. It has taken me years to formulate these journal entries. And so I welcome people to read those. It's some of the in there is some sensitive information on multiple levels, but with that information disseminated, I think it's good for humanity. It's for the good of all people is why it's there. So I would highly recommend people go there and read it. And you may need to read it in small doses. It can be heavy, and so don't feel like it's a race. And I'll put it out in book form at some point soon as
Yeah.
well. I've been working on that, and so
Look at all these chapters. You have a whole book already.
yeah, I'm working on going through all those chapters. So my book basically, Emma, is those chapters with a different introduction, and a foreword by my wife.
Oh.
And I want it to be free to everyone. And so the book is not like I'm providing you with new exclusive information because you've paid for it. Everything I write will be available online. And so I feel like this information is so important for humanity. It's priceless. It has no price. Like, I will not ask you for a price. It can be free online. The book, I don't plan on making money on. You'll have to pay for it because I have to pay to publish it, and print it, and ship it. But I'm not going to try to make a bunch of money with it. It's just so that that word can carry on for generations. So,
I just want to comment on that and say that you deserve to make money on it. Like, we need you to be able to keep doing this, and if we can fund you somehow and help your family out and give you money for doing, for paying for things like this is a big chunk of your time that you're spending with me, a big chunk of your time that you took. I encourage people to want to see survivors make a living and make money off of their projects, and I know that that's not your goal, but like, I want you to keep doing this and I want you to be able to make a living. So I hope that you keep creating things that can help finance this, because this is a lot of time and energy for you. And I know, your time is just as priceless as that information is. So thank you for putting that all together. And if there's anything I can do, or if there's any, resources that you need, please reach out. Like, we have your back. I want to see, a book is sort of a way to immortalize this information. Hopefully, there's never a time that websites start getting taken down, but you never know. So
yeah, you never know. Or if
yeah,
I get whacked,
if
I
they're
need
gonna
to
whack
have a
you, they're
hard
gonna have to
copy.
deal with all of us. You have a whole army behind you, so that will not go well.
Right on. That's good because yeah, thank you, Emma.
Thank you, JR. Is there any closing statements that you want to say or anything that you wanted to close with?
I think I'm done. I've said a lot.
You did say a lot. Thank you so much for sharing, JR. Obviously, I know people will want to have you back. So maybe in the next couple months, we could get together again at some point and keep me posted on your book or anything that we can do to help. That would be another reason I'd want you to come on to help promote that and get people to go support you. So thank you so much
Thank
for the
you.
honor of listening to your testimony.
One thing I want to say is thank you. Thank you to you, and thank you to all the support from everyone. Thank you.
And that goes for me too, you guys. Thank you for supporting JR and every guest, and for looking. Thank you for wanting to see the things that other people look away from. I'm going to have JR's website, mormonmonarch.com, in the description. It's obviously super easy to remember, but if you're driving or you're preoccupied, just go in the show notes later. It's going to be there. It'll highlight, just click it. It'll divert you. You can go check it out like you saw, or even if you didn't, there's so many different articles that he's posted and blog posts. So go check that out. That's going to be what's created into his book. And it's so much information for you guys to go learn more. So thank you guys so much for supporting. I will have all of our information too for the Imagination podcast and all of my own social media in the show notes also. So go support me. I never know what platforms are going to kick me off or keep me either. Who knows? So the more that we can keep in touch across different platforms on the internet, the better. So please go support the Imagination and myself. Go support JR. Keep in touch with all of us. And thank you guys so much. God bless you. And we will see you next time.